Tyler, Texas. Wednesday night, January 19, 2005. A dense winter fog settles over the city, thick enough to mute sound and blur distance. Streetlights glow like pale orbs, and the Walmart parking lot feels strangely isolated despite being a familiar place. At 11:41 p.m., a surveillance camera captures 19-year-old Megan Holden walking out of the store. Her shift finally finished. She carries a small bag of groceries, tired but calm, ready to head home after a long evening of work. Her red Ford F-150 truck sits parked several rows away, barely visible through the fog. In the grainy footage, Megan moves at an easy pace, her shoulders relaxed. Nothing about her body language suggests fear or urgency. This is a routine moment, the end of an ordinary workday. She crosses the lot without looking around, unaware that the darkness around her is hiding someone else, someone patient, someone watching. What unfolds in the next minute will change everything, not just for her family, but for an entire community. Megan Holden was in a fragile but hopeful chapter of her life. Only 19. She had already endured more loss than many people twice her age. Just 4 months earlier, her longtime boyfriend Damon had died suddenly from an asthma attack right in front of her. The shock of that moment stayed with her, leaving a deep emotional wound. Those close to Megan say she felt unanchored afterward, like the future she imagined had been erased without warning. Concerned for her well-being, Megan's mother, Sherry, encouraged her to make a change. Megan moved in with her older sister, Krissa, and Krissa's family, about 40 miles away from their hometown of Henderson. The move to Tyler was meant to be a fresh start, a chance to heal, and slowly it seemed to work. Megan enrolled in junior college, focused on her classes, and took a part-time job at the local Walmart. Determined to rebuild her independence for the first time, Megan felt proud of herself again. She saved money, planned for school, and even bought her own truck in her own name, something that symbolized freedom and adulthood to her. Friends and family noticed a difference. The sadness had not vanished, but it no longer controlled her. She laughed more, talked about the future, and looked forward to what was ahead. On that Wednesday evening, Megan drove to work as usual. The Walmart was about 20 minutes from her sister's house. Earlier that night, during her break, she called her mother. The two talked for the entire break. Sherry told Megan she loved her. Megan responded with a playful teenage dismissal, half embarrassed, half amused, before hanging up. Sherry reminded her to be careful driving home because the weather forecast warned of heavy fog. Megan promised she would call when her shift ended at 11:30. That call never came. At the moment Megan stepped into the fog-filled parking lot, carrying groceries toward her truck, no one knew it would be the last time she was seen freely walking. No alarm sounded, no one screamed, and no one noticed the danger closing in. The surveillance camera kept recording silently, capturing the beginning of a nightmare that would soon consume everyone who loved her. By midnight, concern quietly turned into fear. When Megan did not call at 11:30 as promised, her family initially assumed she was running late, maybe talking to a coworker or stopping somewhere on the way home. But as the minutes passed, unease began to settle in. Megan was known for being reliable. She always answered her phone, always checked in, especially after everything she had been through in recent months. At 1 a.m., Sherry's phone finally rang, but it was not Megan on the line. It was her other daughter, Grayson, her voice tense and worried. Krissa had been trying to reach Megan. For hours, her shift had ended nearly 2 hours earlier, yet she had not arrived home. Repeated calls to Megan's cell phone went straight to voicemail, something that simply did not happen. The family knew immediately that this was not normal behavior. Sherry sprang into action, panic replacing any remaining hope that this was a simple delay. She began calling the Tyler Walmart, asking if anyone had seen Megan leave. Then she called local hospitals, then the highway patrol, desperately checking whether there had been an accident on the fog-covered roads. Each call ended the same way: no reports, no answers, just growing dread. By 3 a.m., with Megan missing for more than 3 hours, Sherry contacted police to report her daughter missing. Officer Roger West was on patrol early Thursday morning when he received the call. A 19-year-old female, last seen leaving her job at Walmart, failed to arrive home. At that point, there was no clear evidence of a crime, but the circumstances were troubling. Officer West drove first to the Tyler Walmart. Arriving around 4 a.m., the store was still active. Employees moved in and out, some on break, others working overnight shifts. The manager confirmed that Megan had clocked in at 6 p.m. and clocked out at 11:41 p.m. Her timesheet showed nothing unusual. She had completed her shift and left on schedule. The unsettling part was what no one could confirm. No employee had actually seen Megan drive away. She had simply disappeared somewhere between clocking out and reaching home. With the heavy fog that night, Officer West considered the possibility of a vehicle accident. Roads in the area were dark and hazardous, visibility severely limited. He retraced the route Megan would have taken home, slowly driving the highways and back roads, scanning ditches and shoulders with his headlights, searching for any sign of a wrecked vehicle or reflective metal hidden in the fog. But there was nothing. No debris, no tire marks, no sign that Megan or her truck had left the roadway. With each passing minute, the situation grew more alarming. Megan had now been missing for over 4 hours. Officer West returned to the Walmart. Realizing that if Megan had vanished near the store, the answers might already be there. One detail stood out immediately. The parking lot was covered by surveillance cameras, positioned on nearly every corner of the building, quietly recording everything. These cameras did not rely on memory or assumptions. They recorded exactly what happened. And if Megan disappeared in that parking lot, at least one of those cameras had seen it. Later that morning, Walmart management provided investigators with the footage from the night before, unaware that within those recordings lay the terrifying truth of what had happened to Megan Holden. Later that morning, investigators gathered to review the surveillance footage from the Tyler Walmart. The video was grainy and silent, but it was honest. It showed exactly what the cameras captured without emotion or interpretation. Detectives knew the answers to Megan Holden's disappearance were somewhere in these recordings. They just had to find them. They began with the employee area. At 11:41 p.m., Megan appeared signing out on a whiteboard, her movements calm and unhurried. Nothing suggested distress. Moments later, another camera angle showed her walking out the front doors in her Walmart uniform. She looked like any other employee ending a late shift. She stepped into the fog-filled night and headed toward the parking lot. As detectives followed her progress across the lot, something unexpected happened. Megan reached her red Ford F-150, but did not drive away. Instead, she got inside and remained there, sitting quietly for 7 full minutes. Investigators paused the footage, questioning what she might have been doing, checking messages, returning a call, or simply taking a moment before heading home. At the time, there was no indication of danger. Then Megan exited the truck and walked back toward the store, this time without her uniform, revealing a bright green striped shirt underneath. It appeared she had forgotten something. At 11:56 p.m., cameras inside the store captured her at a cash register, purchasing a small number of groceries. The transaction was ordinary, quick, and unremarkable. Moments later, Megan left the store. For the second time, grocery bag in hand, once again walking toward her truck, she did not look around. She did not hesitate. She showed no awareness that anything was wrong. The parking lot camera picked her up as she approached the vehicle, and for a brief second, everything still seemed normal. Then detectives noticed a second figure entering the frame. A person dressed entirely in dark clothing moving silently behind Megan. At first, the figure appeared distant, almost blending into the fog. But as Megan reached her truck, the person suddenly broke into a sprint, closing the distance in seconds. Investigators replayed the footage repeatedly, slowing it down, zooming in, hoping they were mistaken. But the reality was undeniable. Megan was not alone. She was being rushed at her own vehicle. The attack was fast, controlled, and purposeful. There was no hesitation, no struggle visible on camera, just a sudden, violent encounter. Within moments, Megan disappeared from view. The camera continued recording as a full minute passed in silence. Then the truck's taillights illuminated. The fog, the vehicle backed out of the parking space and drove away, disappearing into the night. Megan and her attacker were gone. At that instant, the investigation changed completely. This was no accident, no breakdown, and no voluntary disappearance. It was an abduction, carried out in a public parking lot. Under the cover of darkness and fog, Detectives knew time was now their greatest enemy. Every minute mattered, and somewhere out there, a 19-year-old woman was in grave danger. With the reality of an abduction confirmed, investigators moved quickly. Detectives Keschel and Roberts returned to the Walmart parking lot, fully aware that the first 24 to 48 hours would be critical. Crime scene technicians focused their attention on the exact space where Megan's truck had been parked, searching for anything the attacker might have left behind. Near the driver's side door, they discovered a red stain on the pavement. The finding immediately raised fears that Megan had been injured during the attack. Samples were carefully collected and sent for laboratory testing, but results would take time, and until then, investigators were left with uncertainty. The CCTV footage was too distant and grainy to confirm whether Megan had been hurt in the struggle. While technicians processed the scene, detectives kept Megan's family informed, hoping for insight or recognition that might help identify the attacker. When Sherry was shown the surveillance footage, watching her daughter being forced into the truck, her first instinct was hope rather than despair. She believed Megan was still alive, that whoever took her would bring her back, that the nightmare would somehow end without the worst outcome. When lab results finally returned, they offered a brief sense of relief. The red stain found beside the truck was not vital fluid and was unlikely to be connected to the crime. With no confirmed evidence of severe injury at the scene, investigators allowed themselves to believe Megan might still be alive. Desperate for direction, detectives turned to Megan's personal life. They asked standard but necessary questions. Did she use drugs? Did she party? Did she have enemies? Was there anyone who might want to harm her? The family cooperated fully, insisting Megan lived a quiet life focused on school and work. Attention soon turned to relationships. Sherry revealed Megan had recently begun seeing a young man named Daniel Keeney, a friend of Megan's brother-in-law. Detectives knew that in cases of suspected foul play, those closest to the victim must be examined first, especially romantic partners. Suspicion deepened when cell phone records showed Daniel had called Megan while she was sitting in her truck before returning to the store to buy groceries. Investigators questioned whether this call had anything to do with the timing of the attack. Was it coincidence, or was someone guiding her movements? An officer was sent to Daniel's residence. Checking for Megan, her truck, or any sign of suspicious activity, none were found. Daniel was not there, Megan was not there, and her vehicle was not there either. While this did not clear him completely, it meant detectives needed more evidence before drawing conclusions. With questions still unanswered, investigators returned to the surveillance footage, convinced that the cameras held more than just one horrifying angle. The Walmart parking lot was covered by more than 20 cameras, and somewhere among them was the key to understanding who this attacker was and how he moved. The footage would soon reveal that this crime was far more calculated than anyone had initially feared. Investigators began pulling footage from every available camera covering the Walmart parking lot, moving frame by frame through the night starting at 11:57 p.m. The camera positioned above the main entrance captured Megan leaving the store for the second time, groceries in hand. As she exited the top of the frame, another figure appeared behind her, dressed entirely in black. This was the moment her attacker began his pursuit. At first, only the man's legs were visible, but detectives immediately noticed something unusual. He was carrying what appeared to be a gym bag. The object swung slightly as he walked, suggesting weight inside. Investigators questioned whether the bag contained a weapon or restraints, something prepared in advance. This was not random movement. It was deliberate. They switched to a camera. Overlooking the center of the parking lot, there was Megan walking calmly toward her truck, and directly behind her, the man in black, now fully visible from a distance. The spacing between them was consistent, close enough to strike quickly, but far enough to avoid drawing attention. Detectives recognized the behavior as stalking. Another camera from the left side of the lot confirmed the same pattern. Megan entered the frame first, then the suspect followed, his pace steady, his posture focused. He never looked around, never hesitated. His attention was fixed on one person, Megan Holden. Then investigators uncovered footage from earlier that night. At 11:48 p.m., Megan was seen walking back toward the store to buy groceries. Seconds later, the same man appeared in the frame, walking in the opposite direction. The two passed each other at close range. And this detail changed everything. Megan showed no sign of recognition, no nod, no greeting, not even a glance. This single moment told detectives what they needed to. No, Megan did not know this man. This was not a boyfriend, not a friend, not an acquaintance. This was a stranger, waiting, watching, choosing his moment. With this realization, Daniel Keeney was effectively cleared as a suspect. Detectives refocused their efforts entirely on identifying the unknown man in black. The urgency intensified, because stranger abductions are among the most dangerous crimes, unpredictable and often deadly. As investigators continued reviewing footage, they discovered something even more disturbing. Additional video from 45 minutes before the attack showed the suspect entering the store. Cameras followed him. As he moved through the aisles, his behavior stood out. He wandered without purpose, doubling back, watching people rather than shopping. A camera near the restrooms briefly captured him entering and exiting. But the angle was too distant for a clear facial image still. Detectives could see enough to confirm it was the same man, wearing the same clothing, carrying the same bag. Finally, a camera near the store entrance provided the breakthrough investigators needed. The suspect walked directly past it, and for the first time his face was visible in color, a clear profile image. This was no longer just a shadow in the fog. Police now had a face to identify. As detectives stared at the image, one thing became chillingly clear. This man had not come to Walmart to shop. He had come to hunt. As investigators continued following the suspect's movements on camera, his behavior became even more alarming. The footage revealed a pattern that suggested planning rather than impulse. At 11:46 p.m., while Megan was still sitting in her truck talking on the phone, another young woman appeared on camera pushing a shopping cart toward the parking lot. Moments later, the man in black entered the frame behind her. Maintaining distance but clearly tracking her path, detectives watched closely as the woman reached her vehicle. The suspect moved in closer, the spacing between them shrinking. Tension filled the room as investigators waited to see what would happen next. The woman loaded her purchases quickly and drove away, her car disappearing into the fog just seconds before the man could reach her. He stopped, stood still for a brief moment, then turned back toward the store. His opportunity gone, investigators immediately recognized how close this woman had come to being attacked. This footage confirmed detectives' worst fears. The suspect was not targeting Megan specifically. He was targeting opportunity. He was waiting for the right moment, the right circumstances, the right level of isolation. Megan was not chosen because of who she was, but because she happened to be alone at the wrong time. Just 12 minutes later, Megan exited the store for the second time, and this time, the attacker succeeded. The surveillance footage showed a predator who had come prepared, who waited patiently, and who would not leave without a victim. With the suspect's actions now clearly established, investigators turned their attention to tracking Megan's movements after the abduction. Early Friday morning, approximately 26 hours after she was taken, Megan's missing cell phone registered a ping on a cell tower in New Mexico, roughly 800 miles west of Tyler. This single signal shifted the entire investigation. Megan and her abductor were no longer local. They were moving across state lines. Police in Texas immediately contacted authorities in surrounding states, issuing alerts and sharing surveillance. Images of the suspect in Megan's red Ford F-150. As efforts intensified to trace the signal, the case took an unexpected turn even farther west. In Bowie, Arizona, approximately 900 miles from Tyler, a local shop owner reported an armed robbery. The suspect had been shot during the confrontation and fled the scene. Witnesses reported the wounded man escaped in a red Ford F-150, truck matching Megan's vehicle. Arizona officers immediately recognized the significance. One officer suspected the injured suspect would seek medical treatment and decided to monitor the nearest hospital. Not long after, a man matching the suspect's description arrived at the emergency room, wounded and attempting to blend in as a patient. The officer followed him inside, running the Texas license. Plates through the system, the response confirmed every fear. The vehicle belonged to Megan Holden, reported missing after a violent abduction in Tyler. The injured man matched the attacker seen in Walmart surveillance footage, but Megan was nowhere to be found. She was not in the truck, not with him at the hospital, and not accounted for. The officer knew the situation was critical. Whatever had happened to Megan likely happened away from public view, and time was running out. The Arizona officer understood the risk immediately. If this man walked out of the hospital, any chance of finding Megan alive could disappear with him. The suspect was wounded, dangerous, and unpredictable, and the situation could turn violent without warning. Still, the officer knew he could not wait for backup from Texas. He had to act. Inside the emergency room, the suspect lay on a bed while a nurse treated his gunshot wound. Medication dulled his awareness, and the officer saw a narrow window of opportunity. While the suspect was distracted answering medical questions, the officer stepped in and placed handcuffs on him. The arrest was swift and controlled. The suspect did not resist. He was taken into custody without further incident. Texas authorities were notified immediately, and for the first time since Megan's disappearance, police had a name: Johnny Lee Williams. Investigators in Tyler began digging into his background. What they found was deeply unsettling. Williams had a history that aligned with what they had seen on the surveillance footage. When detectives compared Williams's photographs to the images captured at Walmart, the match was undeniable. His height, build, posture, and facial features lined up perfectly. Even more concerning was his past military service. The speed and precision of the abduction now made sense. The way Megan was overpowered in seconds reflected training, discipline, and experience. Investigators discovered that Williams lived in Smith County, the same area where Megan's phone had pinged just hours after her abduction. Officers were dispatched to his residence immediately, clinging to the hope that Megan might still be alive and being held there. When police arrived at Williams's trailer, they announced their presence and breached the door. But inside, the space was empty. Megan was not there. No one was. The silence inside the trailer was devastating. Hopes that this might end with a rescue faded quickly. Still, investigators searched carefully, and what they found confirmed their worst suspicions. Inside the trailer, officers located a Walmart gift card. Walmart security traced the card number, and the result was conclusive. It belonged to Megan Holden. This discovery linked Williams directly to the victim beyond the stolen truck. Further examination of the trailer revealed long brown hair on the bed and other forensic indicators suggesting Megan had been brought there alive. There were no obvious signs of a violent struggle and no presence of vital fluids, which kept investigators clinging to the possibility that she might still be alive somewhere else. Back in Tyler, police met with Megan's family and informed them of Williams' arrest. But they also had to explain the painful truth. Williams refused to tell investigators where Megan was. The family was trapped in agonizing uncertainty, knowing the man responsible was in custody, yet still not knowing where their daughter was. Sherry held on to faith, believing that as long as Megan had not been found, there was still hope. She prayed constantly, convinced that her daughter was alive and waiting to be saved. Investigators continued searching, coordinating with agencies across multiple states, following every lead, every tip, every possibility. Then, hundreds of miles away from Tyler, a discovery would finally bring the search to a tragic end, one that no amount of preparation could soften. Early that morning, nearly 400 miles west of Tyler, a local worker began his routine day, moving through a remote area unaware that he was about to uncover the truth investigators feared most. What he discovered was a young woman's body, abandoned and exposed. Police were called immediately, and within hours, Tyler authorities confirmed the identity. It was Megan Holden. When detectives delivered the news to Sherry, she did not scream or collapse. She already knew. She later said she could no longer feel her daughter. The connection was gone. The bond she had carried since Megan's birth had suddenly fallen silent. In that moment, hope ended, and grief took its place. Johnny Lee Williams eventually pleaded guilty to capital murder under Texas law. The charge carried the ultimate punishment, but Sherry made an extraordinary request. She asked the court to waive the death penalty, not out of mercy, but in exchange for truth. She wanted Williams to sit across from her and explain, face to face, why he took her daughter's life. To save himself, Williams agreed to talk. He told investigators that on the night of the abduction, he needed a vehicle to flee the area. He chose Megan because she looked young, alone, and had a nice red truck. When he reached her, she had just opened the door. He pushed his way in and demanded the keys. But this was never just a carjacking. Williams could have taken the truck and left Megan behind. Instead, he assaulted her, exerting control simply because he wanted to. Later, when Megan tried to escape, her resistance was brave but brief. Williams dragged her from the truck and ended her life. He admitted he knew exactly what he was doing, and that he did it because he wanted to. Williams was sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences. He will die in prison, never free again, never able to harm another innocent person. Justice, in its cold legal form, was served. For Megan's family, justice did not bring peace. They chose to remember how she lived rather than how she died. Sherry described Megan as a part of her soul, a part that would always be missing. She mourned the future stolen from her daughter, the milestones never reached, the life never fully lived. Megan Holden's case stands as a chilling reminder that violence can strike anywhere, even in places that feel safe. Even in the parking lot of a familiar store on an ordinary night, surveillance cameras captured the calculated actions of a trained predator, but they also ensured he could not escape accountability. For those who work late shifts or walk alone to their cars, Megan's story carries a warning. Stay aware, trust your instincts, and take precautions. These actions are not fear-driven, they are survival-driven. Megan was trying to move forward after loss, trying to build a future. She deserved that chance. Though her life was taken far too soon, her memory lives on through her family, through the investigators who refused to stop searching, and through the awareness her story brings. The man who waited in the shadows did not escape justice, and Megan Holden will never be forgotten.